Hey everybody, welcome back to the History of Video Gaming. I'm Wes and I'm here with Ben. How's it going, Ben?
It's going great, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Let's kick things right off with what have you been playing recently?
I've still been floating around a little bit. Luckily, we got to see each other in person again a little while back, so I was playing some Mario Maker, to get ready for that.
Yeah,
Made you
I got
guys
to
a
play some of
little-
your levels and
Hopefully not go too crazy.
yeah, there's some good stuff in there though. The Rhino level especially, very themed.
I really like the Rhino level, yeah. It was pretty good.
I also got to appreciate it because I'm not great at Mario Maker, so I watched you play that one instead of playing it.
Yeah. The one I basically made you and one of our other friends a troll level. That was what I was mainly doing over the weekend, a couple hours here and there.
And it went perfectly, just as expected, right?
Yep. I had a lot of falling hidden blocks, which are really hard to time, so I just threw a lot at you. Of course, a couple of them hit, and those were some good moments, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been doing that. I've been playing some Axis football still. I think I talked about that last time, didn't I?
Yes, yeah. That's the indie football game, right?
Yeah, the indie one. It's still good. I'm still this is good, but it's also bad,
Yeah.
But it's fine. I've been enjoying it. Kind of been in the mood for some sports games again. I kind of always get in the mood every now and then. And right now I'm in the mood for basketball, and I don't own a basketball game other than the Xbox original, NBA 2K04 or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
I'm thinking.
Did it have any good ones for PC too?
I think they have there's only I think one or two big ones, and they're both by EA or some other big company. So I'm kind of on the fence. I think though I've seen mods for NBA 2K19. I want to say. So if I can get mods to work, it's probably pretty decent.
Oh yeah.
So I'm thinking about maybe picking that up on the next sale or whatever. But they always release it $60. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'll wait.
Want to play a sports game? Maybe not that bad, but
yeah,
you get that one, and that can scratch the sports itch for 10 more years until.
I know. Well, I'd have a baseball one too, called what is that one called? I forget. It's more has a more animated style to it. It's not very realistic, but it plays really fun.
It's like backyard baseball style.
Yeah, something like that. But it's pretty fun. So I've got those two. I still need my basketball, and then that'll round me out. I'm still on the fence if I want to pick up the new football game too when it comes out. But,
the new Axis.
Yeah, it comes out in 5 days, I want to say, and they haven't posted any new trailers or anything. So I've kind of been just patiently waiting.
Right.
We'll see.
Well, I have been playing something that I don't think I've gotten into yet on any of these episodes, Divinity Original Sin 2,
Ooh.
which I was talking to you about a little bit.
Yeah, I have. Do I have the second one? I think maybe I only have the first one. But the first one's definitely good. So I'm sure the second's good too.
Yeah, I never played the first one. I got this one I want to say I got it on sale. I probably ended up buying it for full price actually because I was super hype about it.
Oh yeah.
And I played a decent bit when I first got it, but it's just one of those games that's so gigantic, and you can explore it to death. You can definitely get through the game by just doing a little, one path instead of every path, and that's probably the smart way to do it because there's a incentive to do multiple playthroughs as different characters.
Okay.
But yeah, so right now I'm kind of trying to balance that, exploring everything. They just released a while back the definitive edition, which apparently kind of rewrote the ending, and that's supposed to be a little better than it was.
Oh, cool.
And none of my old saves were compatible anyway, so I just started from scratch, and I picked one of the what they call the origin characters, which are I think it's 6 or 5 characters that they already have pre-made stories for.
Okay.
Because you can either pick one of them or do your own character who kind of you make their own story as they go. But you get a unique experience if you play as one of the origin characters. So I'm trying that out. The guy's kind of a dick, but I can still pick dialogue options to make it so he's not so horrible.
Yeah.
The Red Prince, for anybody who listening who might know all the different characters, he's the lizard character who used to be a prince, so he's like super high and mighty and thinks everyone's like lower than him and stuff.
Okay.
But it's good. It's all the environmental stuff, like whenever you're in sort of like a dialogue option, and all the text that's setting up the scene is narrated, which is insane.
Mm-hmm. They had that in the first one, but I think it was less cinematic. It was more just dialogue boxes, but there would be audio, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's how this is too. It's
okay.
kind of just a dialogue box pops up, and then there's audio, but the voice acting is really good, and I can only imagine like how many lines of voice acting this narrator dude had to go through, saying just like random stuff like, "You see a head on a spike. It tries to talk to you." And you're like, "Oh, okay, cool." But yeah, it's super cool. So it's giving me that I was in the mood for an RPG, and also I was in the mood for XCOM, and it has turn-based combat, so kind of gets both of those going.
Yeah, I feel like every now and then I feel like I'm like hovering over the launch again button for that game, or for the first one, and then I'm like, the game is so massive that if I start it up again, it's been probably like a year now since I've played, that I just like would be so out of the loop I should just start again, you know? But if I do that, I lose like 40 hours of progress or something.
Yeah, that's my problem with every single one of those games, because like it's big enough that I'm like, now I'm kind of bored. I'm going to switch off to another game, pick it up a year later in the exact same situation. It's like, well, I put 20 hours into it, but I'm not going to remember all the character choices and why I made them, why I leveled my character this way, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice in a way that it forced me to start over because none of my saves were compatible. Because I was like, well, if I want to play this game, I have to start over. So, but yeah, it's a fantastic game. And right now I'm showing no signs of backing off and stopping. I just got to like a super hard fight that I think is what made me tire out of it last time. But I've got some ideas of how I might be able to beat it.
Good. I mean, it's a great game. And like you said, I think the developers behind that are like really good people too. So, you know.
Yeah, I haven't really engaged in the community too much, but it seems like they are. And the definitive edition apparently is like a pretty big patch. I don't know if I bought it with definitive edition or if that was a free patch afterwards. But yeah, it seems like they do a lot of good work.
Yeah, for sure. So that sounds really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been working on.
I need to find my game to settle in, but I just haven't found it lately.
Yeah. That's what you got to do sometimes. You got to scope around and then you settle in on something.
Yeah. Well, actually, I should mention this real quick before we go to a special topic. My mom plays video games, and she's like getting obsessed with the new Planet Zoo that's coming out. She's like texting me about it like every other day. Like, did you see the new trailer? I'm like, Mom, just calm down. I'm sure it's going to be amazing, but you just got to calm down. But
that's awesome. At least she's not into a WoW Classic.
Well, that's what you think.
Yeah, I was going to say.
She is into WoW Classic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's partly my fault because like high school me was like, you should play this. And now like here we are like 10 years later, she's like still playing and I'm like, this game's stupid. But yeah, I feel like that could be a game that I get sucked into because we haven't had a good zoo game since Zoo Tycoon 3.
Yeah. And those games were great too.
Yeah, and the Planet Coaster guys are like, they did Roller Coaster Tycoon really well, so I'm sure it's going to be great.
Oh, it's the same as the Planet Coaster people?
Yeah.
Oh, Planet, yeah, okay, yeah. That does sound like it'll be pretty good then.
Yeah, so I think the beta, you know, if you pre-order, you get beta access or something, and that starts in like a couple weeks, so that's what I'm getting all the texts about.
Right on.
But maybe I'll get that too. I'm sure I'll get it eventually, you know, might as well.
Yeah, and that'll be the last day I hear from you.
Yeah. All right, why don't we move on to our special topic? We kind of previewed this a little bit last episode, but I kind of wanted, now that we're, you know, really into 1975, I was kind of like looking at our list and I was like, you know, for a long time, Atari has been the number one game developer, you know, since Pong came out. But I'm like, I feel like that might be starting to get in contention, you know? So I kind of wanted to list off all the games that have been made in 1975 from a couple of the big developers and then have you decide who you think is the, you know, top developer here in, you know, halfway through 1975, basically.
God, pressure's on.
I know. Well, it's opinion, so it's not. It's not a big. It's a pressure for the companies, maybe.
Oh yeah. I'm making the big decisions here that'll decide their future.
Yeah. So I've got 4 companies I wanted to bring up, and I looked at like basically every game that came out in '75. And these were the 4 companies that really stood out to me. So let's start with the one that has made the least amount of games. And this one probably doesn't even deserve to be on the list, but I just like them, and that's Meadows Games.
Okay, yeah. They have a soft spot for them.
I know. They made 2 games so far in 75. Flim Flam 2, which, come on. And then Drop Zone 4. So they probably aren't leading the charge, but I like them, so I just wanted to say that again. But then moving on to the bigger ones, we've got Taito. They've made 5 games so far in 75. Actually, they've only made 4, but one of them somebody else stole and put out in 75, so I'm just going to include that, which is Attack UFO. But then they also had Tahitian, which we don't know anything about. They had Dead Heat and Speed Race Deluxe, which are both versions of Speed Race for multiple players with seats and stuff. And then Western Gun, which we talked about in the last episode. So that's what they've been doing. Yeah. We also have Allied Leisure that I wanted to mention. They've also made 5 games so far in 1975. The first 3 are kind of lame, I think. Ricochet, Robot, and Football, which are all, I think, Pong clones. But then you've got Pace Car Pro, which was the first racing game with AI opponents. And then you also had Street Burners, which was the first 2-player speed race game. It beat Dead Heat by Taito, which I believe was their 2-player speed race game. So those 2 games I thought were pretty important. And then finally, you've got Atari, who, based on my count, has released 9 games in 1975 so far, almost doubling the others. But one was Dodge 'em, which I don't think came out. It was just a prototype. Pursuit, I kind of forget what that one is. I think it was an airplane game. Indy 800, Highway, Crossfire, Anti-Aircraft, Goal 4, and then the 2 that we're going to cover in today's episode, which I don't want to reveal yet, but I'll just say, Wes, I think my game is probably around the same amount of goodness as yours. So,
okay.
Yeah, we'll leave it there. But yeah, 9 games. I think the most notable ones in there are probably the 2 that we're going to talk about from today's episode. Also, Indy 800, Highway, Crossfire, and Anti-Aircraft are all pretty high. So, just a quick recap, Wes, and then I'll let you justify who you think is leading the pack right now. We got Meadows Games with 2 games. We've got Taito, mainly with their speed race games and Western Gun. We've got Allied Leisure with Pace Car Pro and Street Burners. And then Atari with Indy 800, Highway, the games from today, Crossfire, and Anti-Aircraft.
Ooh, man. I gotta say, I don't think I'm picking your favorite.
No, it's
Meadows.
Okay. That's okay.
But I too have a soft spot for a company, Taito.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Allied Leisure has some good stuff, but they're not really standing out to me. And then of course, Atari's just got a lot of good stuff, but they're just kind of winning by the fact that they're putting out the most games, which maybe is the way to do it anyway. But just of the ones that I've played in 75 so far, I think Western Gun, possibly because it was the most recent, but is one of the ones that sticks out to me the most. So I think I got to give it to Taito.
Giving it to Taito, the new leader of the history of video gaming, we'll say. Atari has fallen. They're just not producing the games that they used to.
You heard it here first.
I know. I will say one of the games I played today, I think, is probably the best game that they've made. And so far in 75. Okay. But I just feel like, some of their other big hits in 75, like Indy 800 and Highway, they kind of feel like just worse versions of Speed Race, almost.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of where it comes from. Because, honestly, other than Speed Race and Western Gun, Taito has been pretty silent. But those 2 games have just pushed a whole video gaming genre forward so much that, they're the ones innovating to the point of pushing the whole industry's standards and doing that. So
yeah, no, I think that's definitely a good point. I mean, a lot of stuff early 75 that we're seeing just seems kind of similar to a lot of the other games that are coming out from Atari. But Taito's kind of putting out those every now and then, one or two games that are like, hey, what if video games did this? And everyone's like, oh, holy cow, that's awesome.
Yeah. They're like the CD Projekt Red, that of 1975. They don't put out a lot of games, but when they put them out, they're going to be good.
That's true. Yeah, we got that Cyberpunk coming. We'll have to see how that is.
I'm excited. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. That's what my feelings tell me.
Yeah. I think so. It's got to be good. It's also going to be, like we were talking about with RPGs, though, just like massive.
Yeah. We're never going to beat it. That's for sure. All right. I think with that, why don't we move on to the timeline? No Taito games, I think, though, but some Atari ones. So we'll talk about that.
All right. Let's get right into it.
All right, and let's go straight into it. First off, we've got a quick honorable mention here by Nutting Associates. Yes, they are still doing things. Who would have known? In 75. This one's called Table Tennis 2. So,
wowee.
If that's any indication, we won't see him again. But this is just another Pong clone with a single player mode. And also a mode called Slammer, which I don't really know what that is, but I think it has like 3 paddles on each side, but...
interesting.
Yeah, I don't even know if this was ever released, to be honest, because it was kind of in that period where, like, I think Nutting Associates just got sold, or they went bankrupt or something, and then they like started making games again, and then like they were sold again or something.
Right.
So, this could maybe have just been advertised and never even sold. I don't know. There's very little info on it. I do know it's in color, but it's a Pong clone, so who cares?
There you go. You summed it up pretty well.
Yeah. Why don't we move into your game, Wes, which is probably one of the most exciting games of all of 1975, I think. So.
Wow. Big words, but after getting to play this, I think I could definitely agree. This is the first dungeon crawler type game, Petit 5, also called Orthanc 1 in its remade version. And this was by a guy named Rusty Rutherford in fall or winter of 1975. It was a game that was made for the Plato system and used the University of Illinois school mainframe. The reason that it was remade is because the school was like, why are you putting video games on our computer? And they deleted it at some point. But it was remade as Orthanc 1 and the original code was recovered. And the name of Petit 5, which is just kind of out there and I had no idea what it meant at first, actually reflects the generic name that was given to each of the departments at the school, at the university, and the number of slots that they had to be able to put their programs on the mainframe. Cool. I forget what it was. I think it was the planning and economics or something like that department where he worked, or I think he attended. I think he attended there. Yeah. They had 5 games, and this was the 5th game or the 5th program that was on there, and the whole 4th one was just all of the rules that he made for this game. All of Petit 4 was just the rule book. And Orthanc is actually the people who remade this code later. It's a reference to a Lord of the Rings tower, I'm assuming from the books or something. And, nerds are awesome. I love it. People who are making these dungeon crawler type games were like, yeah, let's name it after Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
And when I started this up, because we actually were able to get a emulated version of, as far as I could tell, like exactly the original game, there was a whole lore page before you got into it. And it takes place in the year 666, the number of the beast. And you were going through the ruins of Castle Ramthing? I don't know how to say it, but there was lore. I thought it was awesome. Nice. It was getting me into the mood for a dungeon crawler. And there was this other section where the creator left a whole bunch of notes about improvements that he was planning on making to the game that he never got to make. And later on, we'll eventually be playing a game, I think, that is a improved version of this one. So keep an eye out for that. But getting into the gameplay of it, like I mentioned right at the forefront, it is a dungeon crawler. You just go through, kill monsters, collect gold, and in a very roguelike fashion, although it's kind of retroactive to say that because Rogue wasn't out yet at this point, you could exit the dungeon, you keep all of your gold and the experience you gained, and then you can go back in with the same character. So you can actually like level up, and there's persistence outside of each of your dungeon runs, sort of.
Nice.
Yeah, it's crazy. I wasn't expecting it for a game in 75. And the overall goal is to get 20,000 experience, and then you retire and you have a lot of fame to your name, and that's the the end goal. But basically, you travel through corridors. You have to break down every single door that you walk through, which I think is hilarious. And enter rooms. There could be random enemies in there. Collect the gold and then leave. And each action that you take either takes a fraction of a turn or multiple turns to perform. And the reason that matters is there's a random chance to find secret doors every time a turn passes, and also a random chance that a monster will ambush you. And this is, I should mention as I'm going into it, very, very D&D inspired. D&D came out in 74, and it really shows with a lot of the stuff that it kind of directly translates into this. Because you have stats like strength, intelligence, constitution, dexterity, and hits. And especially right after coming off of playing Divinity Original Sin 2 before I played this. And all of that just like directly translates because, you know, it's still just like the RPG formula for like everything. You got your strength for your heavy weapons. In this, dex is initiative instead of light weapons, but it's very, very cool. So your hits is your health points. Int is int, basically. And constitution affects how many hits you have and how many you gain per level. And also, when you create a character, it's randomly generated what stats you have. So it's basically like you're rolling for a character in D&D, which is pretty sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Although a lot of the guys I got at the very beginning just like got one shot by anything that they encountered. I made it pretty far in one of my runs, and I think that was mainly because of the roll I got at the beginning. But I mean, hey, you gotta live by the die, you die by the die.
Yeah.
Hard to say, and I can't believe I got through that. But some of the other just cool miscellaneous stuff about this, monsters have different levels and also different types and different categories. It's like insane the amount of depth there is there. There's like, oh, there's beast monsters, and there could be a rat level 1 through 6, but the best beast monster is a warthog level 1 through 6. And it's great. And there's also the secret rooms, like I mentioned. And one of the best ways I thought I could describe it is just a couple of the runs I had. Feeling very WoW Classic inspired. I named my first character after my first WoW character when I was like 13 or whatever, named Draven.
Nice.
And first run through, I killed a level 4 white. Thought I was like super strong, and then died to a level 4 Medusa and couldn't figure out how to use my spells. And then on the third run in, I found out that you could just leave whenever you want. And I was like, oh, okay, that's sweet. And that's when I learned that you had a persistence between the different characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the real way to, or an easy way to kind of progress through it is just to do short runs and get like gold, kill one monster, get out. And then next time you come in, you're basically leveled up. So you're a lot stronger.
Oh, okay.
So after I did that, yeah, because I kept trying to just explore in one run, but I don't think your experience levels goes to leveling you until you exit the dungeon. So you don't get any new stats and stuff until then. So I started doing that and actually got pretty far. The best run I had was up to 16,000 XP, so only 4,000 short of the of winning it.
Wow!
But still, it was so easy to get insta killed. On the best run, I killed a level 5 white, got the 16,000 XP, and did about 5 dungeon runs with the same character. And then on the last run in there, I killed 5 creatures all in the same run, used all my healing spells and everything, but then I couldn't find the exit, and then I got wrecked by a level 6 dragon, which I think is basically like the toughest monster in the game.
Uh-huh.
And it was just, all in all, I mean, I'm a sucker for this type of game anyway, but it was the best. I had so much fun playing it. Some of my scores, because still keeping into account what this game is, are going to be a little on the lower side, but it's just overall a super awesome game. But getting into my ratings, the graphics, it's a computer game that actually has visuals, so it's probably the first time, or one of the first times, I'm not giving a 0 out of 10 for a computer game. It's 2 out of 10 for me. Yeah, not text-based. Although lots of text, which is helpful in this one. There's no moving graphics, but there is like the layout of a dungeon, several different rooms. The monsters each have their own little image for each like type of monster, and your character like is very clearly a dude holding a sword and a shield. So it's super cool. There's a rat, a dragon, a skeleton, and an evil man, which is just you, except the shield looks a little different. But all of them look super good. I didn't even mind the moving graphics very much because it just basically every time you hit a direction changes the screen, and it works really well for this type of game.
Mm-hmm.
But other than all that, the reason it's a 2 out of 10 is just because there's no color. It's just black background, no moving graphics, and all of the illustrated parts are orange.
Mm-hmm.
For sound, there's still no sound because it's a computer game. So 0 out of 10 for that. But the gameplay, I gave a 4 out of 10.
Nice.
There's just a lot of moments where you feel kind of helpless and you just die, get one shot. And there's no information in this version for it to say, like, you swing, he loses 3 health, and then he hits you, you lose 1 health. It's just like you click fight, and then you just die.
Yeah.
So that could be a little jarring, but overall, the gameplay was super good. You have lots of different options. You have like 10, 20 different spells, I think, that you can cast in combat, or you can just fight them. And as you level, you can use your spells more frequently for each dungeon run.
What are the spells like? I mean, what do they do?
So let me give you a couple of them. I read through it briefly, but I was lucky enough that I remembered all like the different weird niche scenarios. There's one that's just like super good for leveling, where you can just put anything to sleep that's under level 4 and then instantly kill it.
Oh, okay, nice.
So that one's great. And then there's a version of that you can do on all levels, except it's a % chance and it's not automatic. There's like magic bolts. There's one that's a last ditch effort that uses all your remaining magic but deals a ton of damage, called Blast Bolt, I think. And then you have a bunch of clerical spells, which are like healing, casting light on yourself, because apparently there's like chance to be surprised, and it reduces the chance to be surprised by monsters.
Okay.
Which is like straight out of Darkest Dungeon, like having your torch level up. So, but tons of different spells. I only used like pretty much the ones I mentioned. There's also an invisibility, which I should have used on the dragon, but you know, hindsight and all that.
Wait, so when I played it, just a sec, I basically went in there. Once you hit fight, like the end result happens immediately, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what do you, like, if you're healing, you go to magic spells, you heal, and then you hit fight?
So the fight is only the physical fighting, not any spell fighting kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I only ever healed when I wasn't in combat. I don't know if you can.
Oh, okay.
No, you probably could. So you probably could have healed in combat.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you could use spells out of combat.
Yeah, I think it might just be your clerical spells.
Okay.
Which, yeah, I figured it out. I found another blog post where somebody did a playthrough of that, and it took me forever to figure out that there's a way to show your stats on screen every single turn.
Oh, cool.
To see how many hit points you have left, because at first I thought you were supposed to guess.
Right.
And that made it like the experience like for a gameplay 2 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, really. Because if I hadn't figured that out, it would have just been hell to try and figure out what was going on.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. I thought it was like, maybe you somehow increase your % chance to win, but if you won, you won, and you didn't take any hit points or something, you know? That's what I thought it happened at the beginning when I was walking around.
Yeah, when I was just like winning and dying, that's kind of what I thought too. But then after I figured out how to check it, it was like, no, okay, in that battle that I won, I lost 3 hit points. So
okay. Cool.
It was still basically like you kind of just had to fight and then check after and see what happened. But there was a point where I was up to like 20 hit points. So you kind of get good at guessing like, okay, well, this thing's this level, so it should only deal like that many HP damage to me. Yeah, so you can kind of figure out what fights you might survive and stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, there was a good deal of strategy to it, and it had me double checking a lot to make sure it was the original code, but it looks like this was all like how it was originally made, which is super impressive. But
and then
also go for it.
I was going to ask one more question, and that was like in a normal dungeon crawler, I think a lot of times they're kind of randomized, but was it the same every time? And if you killed something in your last run, would it be back? Or how did that work?
So the layout of the dungeon is exactly the same every time, but where everything spawns and what it is random.
Oh, cool.
Which was super nice, yeah. So, I mean, I don't think there's like a dragon that once you kill it, it's dead, but
he's
like,
not
you just
always
run
at the back either.
Yeah. I couldn't figure out, because I did a bunch of short runs, I couldn't figure out if it's like the deeper you get, maybe the higher level you fight. I could see that being a thing, and it probably would have been possible to program at that time, but I'm not positive on that. Although when I did get lost by going down like 20 different corridors, that's when I saw the level 6 dragon.
Yeah.
So it's circumstantial, but that's my evidence pointing at that right now, because every other time I just saw like level 1 rats.
Yeah. I mean, I only fought like one thing when I was playing, and it was like a level 1 rat. So
Yeah.
In like the
But
second room.
Yeah. I did find level 5s kind of sitting by the entrance too, so who knows.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so it was really cool. I mean,
wow.
The bad downside of it was I went through like 15 rooms in one run, and there just wasn't any gold, any monsters. But it doesn't seem like that was the usual case. So one thing, part of the gameplay that why I knocked it down a little bit, but was also kind of impressive for this. In dungeon crawlers, I kind of think about like gathering gear as like a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not too much gear that you can find in this, but there actually are 2 different swords that you can get, which I thought was pretty cool. Just magical swords that give you extra damage, and when you get them, you keep them so you can use them on other runs too.
Nice.
And for relevance, I bumped it like way up there, being the first dungeon crawler, and gave it a 9 out of 10.
Oh yeah.
I think it's heavily inspired by D&D, but since we're talking about video game history here, this is the first one that really like said, hey, let's put D&D into a video game.
Yeah.
Which is basically like
RPGs.
Yeah, that's just RPGs. Like that that's RPGs. That's our MMO RPGs. Like that formula is, I don't know. I feel like it's hard to not overstate it. Like it's so hugely relevant.
Yeah, like you were just playing one, like before we got into the
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and like that's so many of the games I play are RPGs. One of the only reasons I didn't give it a 10 out of 10 is just sort of the outside of people who know a lot about video game history. It doesn't have the massive name recognition like a game like Rogue, when you think of
Sure.
a roguelike dungeon crawler, and it didn't really like define a genre. Part of that it could be just because it's called Petit 5, but but either way, it's hugely relevant. First dungeon crawler, character leveling, persistent character across multiple runs.
Yeah, all the different monsters that I don't think we've ever seen a dragon in a video game, or a skeleton, or
right.
Medusa.
And they weren't afraid to get into the D&D like weird characters too, like the wights and the skeletons and everything else. So overall, I gave it a 4 out of 10. This is like definitely my kind of game. I love how much detail it has in it, and just that it's like super complicated D&D style. I wish it was easier to tell what was happening during combat. That's kind of my main complaint about it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's just super fun, very simple, but so glad that it's like, all right, now we're in the era where dungeon crawling and RPGs are like squarely in the gaming world.
Yeah, which is a very exciting time.
Yeah. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, I like that one. It was super good. I'd even recommend like playing it now just to check it out, because it still holds up.
Yeah, we should mention we had to play this on Cyber One, and you need to go on their website and put in an application or something, right?
True, yeah, to be able to play it.
It's worth it.
You could see other people's characters too, how much progress they'd made with them. Because you can choose anybody's character, but you have to enter a password to be able to play as it.
Mm-hmm. Which is a cool way of doing it.
Yeah. So whether you want to register for Cyber One, or maybe just see if there's a video of somebody playing it, or just listen to me talking about it, experience it in some way. It's a good game.
Yeah, definitely look up some screenshots, just because of the models. I think are pretty nice, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was a great one. I was glad I could give that one to you, Wes. We had to make sure you were Cyber One approved.
True, yeah. So now you can get me to go do all the Cyber One games.
Well, I'm going to take the next one. Come on, Wes.
Oh, of course.
Which I'm even more excited about somehow. But why don't we move on, Wes? What do you think?
Yeah, let's get into the next one that you got to talk about.
Yeah, well, the next one I didn't actually rate, but it's a console, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit longer than normal. This one's called the Pingatronic. We've already talked about the Pingatronic Ps 1 to 4, if you remember right. That was in 74. And that console, it was pretty basic, had no sound, no scorekeeping, but it did have 3 games, including an automatic attract mode, and all that is still the same here, but now we're at the models PP5 to PP10, Why are there 5 models all doing the same thing? I don't know. But starting at the PP5, they introduced a gun type game where you could buy a light gun similar to the Odyssey. And I think this is the only other console other than the Odyssey to have a light gun in the home. And this one is much cheaper than what the Odyssey was going for. So you got 3 games, and the Gunotronic is what they called it, which was basically just a target shooting game. We've seen a couple of those from the Odyssey, but I didn't find any screenshots of it, so I'm not sure exactly how it played, but, you know, a light gun game at home. So with basically 2 other Pong type games and screensaver type
right
automatic mode. So yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I don't think they really improved it that much. I mean, having a light gun at home is kind of cool, and it's the first one to do it since the Odyssey in '73, I want to say, is when that came out. So it's been 2 years, and I'm the only one to do it, so maybe it sold kind of well, but I kind of don't think it did, because we are not going to hear from the publisher Zanussi again, I don't think. So but we'll keep you guys. Yeah, we'll keep you guys in touch about that. If they do make something, we will talk about it. Don't worry. And that's all I really want to say about it, Wes. Pingatronic, all right. PP5 to PP10. all the Pingatronics. Yeah.
Right there.
I think they just basically were different chipsets, or different.
Oh, okay.
That different internal components, but no real impacts on gameplay other than the Gunotronic add-on.
Right, sort of like when we were the Odyssey 200 and the 100 coming out like right after one another.
Right.
So next up, we have a couple of honorable mentions. The first one is Video Action 2. This was the table version of it, played volleyball and Pong doubles, sort of the Odyssey style, and it also had a versus robot mode and a slam button featured in it. And next up was Amusement 21 by A1 Supply, who I don't know if we've heard much from before.
No, I think they were the guys who bought Nutting Associates. So maybe it's actually Nutting Associates here making games under this company.
We could only hope. But Amusement 21 was video blackjack, basically, and it had a color version. And after that, we have another console, and this one is pretty cool because it was the first home gaming system to be released in Japan. This is the TV Tennis, Electro Tennis. Those were the 2 different names that it had, console by Epoch. And it came out in September 12th of 75. I have 2017 on there. That's definitely not right. But I wrote that on my notes by accident. And this was pretty neat for being the first one in Japan, and also because it didn't have a powered adapter like a lot of the older home systems at the time. This one actually ran off of batteries.
Oh, cool.
And it was a large orange console, had controls on either side, like a lot of the home consoles we've seen. It did have sound, but I'm not sure if that came through the TV or the console. I couldn't tell from the video I saw. And one of the coolest things about this is that it was actually wireless. It communicated using ultra-high frequency waves, which is a classification of radio frequency.
Okay.
And you basically just plugged a small antenna that came with it into your TV, and it would transmit using those radio waves. And it shows how little I know about radio waves. I didn't know that you could do video through it, but apparently that's how some broadcast TV worked at the time too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy. I don't, for whatever reason, in my head, thinking 75, the idea of like wireless, I was just like, how could that be?
I know. And then you see the big TV sets. Thing.
Yeah. So it makes sense. I mean, TVs were doing it, so they were able to do it in that system. The games on it weren't super interesting, or well, game on it. It was just Odyssey-style Pong. It did have a 1-player mode, but it looked sort of like it looked like the other paddle pretty much always hit it back, no matter what. Maybe you just had to be really good. But it also had a 2-player mode. There was no on-screen scoring, and it was basically Odyssey-style Pong, so you could go all over the screen and do whatever. So that part wasn't super interesting. Black background, white lines, white paddles. But the console itself, for the wireless technology and the fact that it was battery-powered, it's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the wireless part really kind of threw me for a loop when I saw it. I was like, this is something right out of the year 3000, what it looked like.
The future is now. It must have been pretty crazy at the time. I mean, I guess people were at least fairly familiar with how TVs worked and TV signals, but I feel like playing a game that way must have seemed pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
But the console itself,
latency was.
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, it was like super close, and I think there is like something to do with physical travel distance and the latency. But so you could position it really close, but I'm not going to pretend I know a lot about that.
Yeah, me neither.
The console itself apparently only sold about 10,000 copies, which for the time I don't think was super good. And I did some janky math to figure out the conversion from yen to how much it would have cost today. So take this with a grain of salt. But I think it would have been about $350 US, accounting for inflation.
I feel like that's, well, you only got one game. Maybe it's not so good, but
I feel like it's kind of in line with some of the consoles we've been seeing right now in the US too. So not crazy, but I mean, you can play it from 2 feet away, like.
Yeah.
So that is the Electro Tennis by Epic, however you say it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Nice. I think we'll move on right to my first game that I rated, and this one is a doozy. We've got a lot of great games here. I told you the end of 75 was going to be crazy, Wes. This one's by Atari, and it's one of the ones that if Wes had played it, maybe would have pushed Atari ahead of Taito. I don't know, but it's pretty good. It's called Shark Jaws. And before I go any further, I should just mention that Jaws the movie came out, right? And it was such a hit that Atari saw and was like, we got to do something, to capitalize on this. But they were afraid of getting sued. So they created this fake company called Horror Games. And then Horror Games released Shark Jaws. But it's widely known that was by Atari and was just to prevent, if people who made Jaws sued Horror Games, that it wouldn't go on Atari.
Back at it with that shady fake company business.
I know. I know. And this is the only game Horror Games ever released. I don't believe they ever got sued because it's called Shark Jaws, but I don't think it was, there's nothing directly copyright infringement about it, I don't think.
Right,
so
right.
I don't think it ever got sued, but it is kind of a funny story, I think, though. And this one came out September 25th of 1975. And basically what the game is you've got a scuba kind of diver dude that you're controlling. And I'll talk about what he looks like later, but he looks pretty good. And
nice.
There's basically a square dot that I think represents a fish or something. And it's kind of moving around pretty randomly and pretty fast around the screen. And there's also a shark that's really big trying to follow and chase you, but he kind of will overshoot and miss and stuff, so you can dodge him pretty easily. So you're basically trying to collect as many fish as you can while dodging the shark. And I believe it was maybe a 60-second game or something like that, and you were just trying to collect as many fish as you can, and if you got eaten, you just basically lost time.
Okay.
But there's a couple big things about this game. Number one, the sprites and animation look really good. Really good. I mean, the diver guy, even the way they drew his body and stuff, he's holding a harpoon, first of all, which is already good.
Oh, nice.
And he's got some animation with his feet, so they kind of move a little bit, so it looks like he's swimming. And the way they drew up his body, he's got a very rectangular body, but from a distance it looks like he's got scuba gear on somehow. It's not that detailed, but just if you were looking at a scuba diver from 100 yards away or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's what it looks like. And then what's even more amazing to me is the shark looks good, and the shark is animated too. He does some swiveling of the body to make him look like he's moving.
Oh, wow.
And it looks good. Yeah, I was like, wow, someone's been studying the anatomy of sharks here. Yeah, so that looks really good. And let me just talk about, we get in the graphics rating while I'm talking about it, but I ended up giving the graphics a 3.5 out of 10 just because of that animation and those sprites. I will say it was kind of held back a little bit because there's no background at all. It's just completely black.
Right.
And there were the fish that you're catching isn't a fish, it's just a rectangle, basically like a pong ball or something. So there wasn't anything other than those two sprites, but they look good and they were both animated, and to me that was very impressive. So I gave it 3.5 out of 10. let's go on to sound, because sound is another one that I was really surprised about. So let's take a listen to that first of all. So as you can hear, it's pretty advanced for the time. There's like this, like, I want to say it's almost like a heartbeat in the background, but it's kind of more tactile, like some sort of drumming, but it's just consistent, you know? And that kind of makes it kind of suspenseful, and it also sounds really good and not at all like a Pong sound, which is great.
Right.
And then in addition to that, whenever you catch a fish, you get this weird kind of like underwater submarine sound, like, or like the underwater radar sound or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean, yeah.
And I'll say that sound isn't particularly nice on the ears, but it again is very unique and sounds really good compared to a lot of the sounds nowadays. At first I thought this must be electromechanical because of how nice it sounded, but I believe it was from the actual game, so that's really impressive, I think. So for sound, I gave it a 3 out of 10. I kind of wanted to give it more, but the fact that that radar sound wasn't particularly nice on the ears didn't help it. And obviously there's no music, there's no ambient bubbles or something, you know, there's no chomp sound when you get eaten, so it's just missing a lot. But I feel like compared to a lot of the other games, it's pretty good, so I gave it 3 out of 10 there. It's
a sign of how much the games that we're playing are improving now, that we're like, oh, we got to be a little harsher with our scale because these are good.
Like, yeah. But well, it's like, I don't know. Maybe we rated some of the early ones too high, but
well, yeah, it could be that too. But that's going to happen as we go through anyway, because things are going to keep getting better and better.
Well, that's the thing, though. We're playing them through chronologically, so we just expect more from our games now, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the games are definitely getting better, and the sound is better, and like I mentioned with the graphics, they look way good. So that's really good. And finally for gameplay, I gave it a 2.5 out of 10. I kind of wanted to give it more, but there's quite a lot of problems, I think, with the gameplay. Like, I think the heart of it is fun enough, where you're just dodging a shark, chasing these fish. But for instance, there's no timer that shows you how long you have left. So there's a score that counts up how many fish you get, but you never really know how much time you have left. I didn't like that. I didn't like the gameplay. After me playing through 2 games, I was like pretty done with it, you know? I was like, okay, you're dodging the shark, you're catching the fish, that's it, you know? There's nothing else. So I just think it'll get stale pretty fast. But I think 2.5 out of 10 is still not a bad game. There's nothing inherently bad about it. Certainly more refreshing than playing Pong or something.
Absolutely.
So, you know, it's definitely not a bad game, but I just think it's very bare bones in terms of the gameplay. As you get further into the game, the more fish you get, I think the faster the shark gets too, which once you get really high score, the shark is just like on top of you, you know, and you're just continually dying. So that's never a good feeling either, when it feels like the game's trying to prevent you from getting good.
Right, yeah.
One interesting thing about the gameplay I want to mention quick, I don't think this was an emulator thing. I think this was with the original too, but I'm not positive. But definitely in the emulator that I played, you as the diver couldn't like go horizontally screen wrap or vertically, but the shark could, which was kind of interesting because you might be going down and the shark's like going up and you're like, okay, whatever, and then you see him come up from behind, like the bottom, you're like, how did you do that? I can't do that. And luckily the fish I don't think can do it either, but the shark can, which is kind of interesting. Also, I think I didn't mention this either, but on the graphics side, the game was basically black and white, but I believe on the original cabinets it had like a blue overlay, so it's kind of like a dark blue on black, which is kind of interesting because it kind of makes you feel like you're deep down underwater, like it's really dark.
Right, yeah.
And maybe that could work with just the blank nothing of a background, but I was like, no, that's still like a cop-out. So I didn't really give it more there. But finally, for relevance, I went a little crazy here.
Oh, all right, let's hear it.
Yeah, I went 7.5 out of 10. And let me tell you why, Wes, because I was thinking about it a lot, but I just feel like this game hits so many like collector's dreams. It's like Atari mixed with Jaws under a third company name. Like I feel like the story behind it is so good.
That's true. Yeah.
And it's also the very first game of its kind. We've never played a game like this. And the animations and the sprites are just so good. I was like, they really pushed it on the graphics, I think, a little bit on this game, which is really good. And also, something else I thought was really awesome about it was the first time we'd ever seen a diver in a video game, ever seen any game underwater, ever seen a shark, let alone one that actually looks good.
Right.
So it had a lot of firsts. They're not like the most important firsts, and I don't think the game... Well, I don't know. I feel like it is the first Jaws game, and there are definitely others that come after, and some of them are pretty famous, I think. So I wanted to give it some relevance. Maybe I went a little too high, but I don't know. I think to me, it's kind of a special one where it's like if you're a collector or something of old arcade games, you need this one, It's
right.
just like...
That's the one that's got the story with it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just got such a unique story, like you mentioned, and to me, that makes it very relevant. So it's very memorable, I'll say. So
very cool.
Shark Jaws. What do you think, Wes?
I think it sounds cool. Yeah, that's definitely... I mean, like you said, even if the gameplay isn't like the peak, it's got a lot of interesting stuff about it. It's a game that just has like so much character to it.
Yeah. The sprites definitely help with the character, because for it being a Jaws game, they do a good job with that shark, man. It looks good. And the diver looks good too. I just wish he would jab his harpoon or something.
Right. Spear the fish.
But yeah, it was a cool one. I'm excited to see the next iteration on a game like that.
Yeah.
If it just had some, like a little bit more animation, like an actual fish, a couple other things, it could be pretty good, I think. So.
Oh, what was your overall rating for that one?
Oh yeah, the overall, I gave it a 4 out of 10. Pretty high. I mean, same that you gave Pet at 5, but I think they're both good for different reasons.
Right. Yeah.
Mine is more like, I feel like you have to play it one time, whereas yours, you could play it for months and feel like I want to play more.
True.
But yeah, mine's definitely, I feel like Shark Jaws, you should definitely check out at least once, I think. Just for the history.
If nothing else, yeah. And to say that you played Shark Jaws.
Oh yeah, by horror games.
So do you want to move on with that then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So the next one we have is an honorable mention called Bullet Mark by Sega. And this one came out. Yeah, Sega. They're doing stuff. Eventually we'll play a game by them. And this one came out in October of 75. It's a light gun video game that featured 2 Tommy guns shooting at just various things. And as far as we know, it's probably not electromechanical, which sounds like a pretty cool game. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we couldn't find emulation on that or like video or anything, so we don't have much info. But I think from the flyer, they had like kind of a picture of the cabinet, and it didn't look mechanical, black and white sort of sprite like instead. So
cool.
Could be pretty cool, I think. Moving on from that, we've got another honorable mention here called Heavy Traffic by Digital Games. We've seen a fair amount. They haven't been doing anything like crazy, but they're like on the clone bandwagon of cloning whatever they could find.
Right.
And this is no exception, because this is a clone of Speed Race by Taito, except instead of a race car that you're driving a motorcycle. So they probably just like switch one sprite out, and they're like, good to go.
All right, there you go.
But hey, I think it's the first ever motorcycle video game, so
true.
It's pretty good.
It's got that going for it.
Yeah.
And next up, we have the second game that I got to play and review this week, Steeplechase by Atari. And this is when we were alluding earlier to 2 good Atari games coming out in this episode that we're covering. Definitely, the more I think about it, might have changed my opinion a little bit. I just kind of like not picking Atari, giving the other people a chance.
Yeah.
But this one came out in October 1st of 75. Apparently, it was developed by the Key Games side of Atari, but I think at this point they were fully subsidiary.
Mm-hmm.
And the cabinet was really cool. It had illustration of like a steeplechase course, which is kind of like a horse race kind of thing, except there's hurdles that the horses have to jump over. and it had a cartoony style horse and jockey with like very 70s colors and everything on it. And one of the coolest parts about this is it's a 6-player game, and the cabinet is literally just 6 buttons, which is your jump button for the horse. So depending on how many people you have playing, you could have like 6 people crowded around one pretty standard sized arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
And in a video that we got to see of some people trying out the actual cabinet, it's basically just everyone standing sideways with one hand in it, staring at the screen, trying to jump, which I think would be hilarious.
It kind of reminded me of like 6 people hitting buttons on a keyboard. Like, it's hard to get 6 people on a keyboard.
Yeah. And people were like wrapping around the side. Not everyone's going to have great viewing angles of this game when they're playing it.
Yeah.
And another just fun random anecdote from when I was looking at the flyer, on the description for the flyer, it says that this is by Atari, #1 in video games. So they already know that they're good.
They're a little cocky there.
They're a little cocky. They can make as many fake companies as they need to get to the top. And another one of the coolest parts about this is that there's 7 horses. One of them is always a AI, and each of them has apparently an overlay, although on the actual cabinet it doesn't look like an overlay, so I'm not positive. But different colors for each of the tracks and the horses for all 7 of them.
I'm
so
pretty
really
sure
cool.
that was all real color.
All real color? Okay.
Yeah, no,
it might have been one of the sources I was looking at had it messed up, but definitely when you look at the cabinet, it looks like the color is being generated by the screen. There's not anything covering that to change the color. And each of the 6 buttons that the players can control to jump matches the color of their horse on the screen, which is also pretty cool. And so for the gameplay, it's kind of a static screen where there is a dotted line moving under you, which is the track, and you have a horse galloping on top, and you just have to jump over these little dashes that kind of stick up, which are supposed to represent hurdles. And the mechanics were a little hard for me to tell what determined what happened, but it looks like if you jump a hurdle, you maintain speed, and if you jump multiple in a row, you increase speed. But if you hit it, you lose speed. And hurdles kind of show up in different intervals. Sometimes they're really close to each other, sometimes they're far apart, so it makes it real hard to just do timing to be able to jump over them. And as far as I could tell, the AI never misses a jump, but their horse doesn't increase speed. So eventually they will win, but you can definitely outpace them and do big comebacks if you're just playing against the AI.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat one, and I did get to play this one on an emulator, which was really cool. I mean, it looked pretty true to what the original was, and a lot of this I feel like I need to talk about just by going into the ratings, so I'm just going to go straight into it. With the graphics, I gave it a 3.5 out of 10. The motion on the horses is really cool. The galloping motion looks super good. There's a jump image where like all the legs are up, and then also your dude's like flying off of it whenever you hit any of the hurdles. And just a lot of nice touches to make that look really good. And also the fact that each lane is a different color is super cool. But that's basically kind of similar to Shark Jaws. Like all what it has going for it is this animation and the colors, because the background's just black.
Yeah.
And there's like a finish line flag, which is like, okay, cool, whatever. And the track looks like really bad. It's just like a dotted line. And the way it moves, like my eyes were bugging out the whole time I was playing this. It was super hard to focus my eyes on it.
Yeah.
But that being said, the horse and the animation for that, really cool. But the dotted track, the background, not so much. While I was playing this, I don't know if it was the time of day, the light in the background on my screen, my eyes, but I like had to step away and stop playing for a little bit because it was just like my eyes could not focus on the screen with the way that all 7 tracks are stacked up on top of each other and moving at the same time, but your horses are moving at different speeds.
Yeah.
My brain was like about to explode. But moving on from that section of it, the sound, I gave a 3 out of 10. It had really cool arcade sounds. I think Atari must have just like figured out how to make cool sounds for their games at this point, because similar to Shark Jaws, this had a lot of cool stuff. There was a galloping noise that was just kind of like a fast-paced clicks that got faster as I think probably whatever the fastest horse was, it probably matched that pace. And there was a awesome bugle intro, like the typical horse race.
Nice.
That played at the beginning of every race.
Wow.
And then there was a sound which sounded like a slide whistle. If I know you know what that is, Ben, I'm not sure if all the listeners will, but it was supposed to be a crowd cheering. So
It was?
That one was really strange. Or at least according to the flyer, it said something about a crowd cheering, and I'm like, I don't hear anything except for that strange slide whistle that randomly happened. But I think that's what that one was. So very similar to Shark Jaws in that way, where it's like a lot of good sounds and then one like really weird sound.
Yeah.
But still, overall, 3 out of 10 for sound is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so.
And for the gameplay, I did write at the end of this, aka I'm salty, because I never won. I gave it a 2 out of 10 for gameplay. I could see it being fun with a lot of people, and just the idea of like all 6 people playing it is ridiculous, and that makes it fun in its own way. But the way the track moved, the way the horse moved, and being able to time all those jumps, like I just could not do it. Something in my brain did not compute with this game. And you lose the speed so sharply whenever you hit a hurdle that if you've got the timing down for a different jump interval and then you hit a hurdle, you're just hit like 8 in a row. Or at least I hit 8 in a row.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Because it was just throwing off my rhythm so bad. And the gameplay, to defend myself a little bit, it is pretty simple. But I think that's part of what makes it good, and you can play it with 6 people. But the difficulty of it, or at least the trouble I was having with it, is what really killed it for me. Overall, I think it's a pretty fun game, but for my experience and maybe other people's as well, 2 out of 10 is what I would think for gameplay. But for the relevance, I gave it a 4 out of 10. I think it seems like it was fairly popular, but not necessarily a huge success. And it's not really like it influenced a ton of other horse racing games, because we don't see tons of horse racing video games today. But I think the fact that it's an Atari game and that it had the color graphics and a lot of stuff like that means that it's still fairly relevant, just not a hugely relevant game. And overall, I gave it a 3 out of 10. I think there's a lot about the presentation of the game that's really cool. The visuals and the sound just are pretty good, but it's just the gameplay that kind of wasn't too sure. It didn't pull me in as much, but I do like the theming of it, and I do like that you get faster the more hurdles you jump. It's just kind of a difficult game, and that's what pulled me out of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think kind of adding to your relevance score, I do see a lot of horse betting games like that are electromechanical that we never talk about because they're electromechanical, but I feel like this is kind of Atari's way of like being like, you like horse betting, right? You can bet on your friends, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's actually, and something in the flyer that I didn't mention is that they kind of they advertise it as that, as like, you can set up your own horse betting things and like make extra money by having their customers go up against each other. Or, well, I guess the bar might not be making money, but you know. So yeah, that was definitely probably a fairly popular thing at the time too, to go bet on horse racing and all that. So that could definitely feed into why this was Atari like, hey, we got to jump on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing I just have to say, this game came out like 6 days after Shark Jaws. Like how? I know Key Games led this one you mentioned, probably.
Yeah,
that just means they've got like 2 really talented teams there, you know.
Yeah, it's pretty insane that they were able to just like pump out this many games.
Yeah, like these last 2 have been pretty good, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
It just helps with the full color and animation and good sound. Like if you get that, it's like can't go wrong right now.
Yeah.
And I think your game had all 3, really.
It did. Yeah, it had a lot of good stuff going for it.
So just needed that gameplay element and it'll be perfect. But yeah, so let's move on to our last game of the day, which is a console that I rated. And this one's kind of a bigger one. It's called the Interton Video 2000 by Interton, which is a German-based company. And it's, they're basically Pong console that they released in Germany. But what makes this one interesting is, unlike the last couple of consoles that we've covered, this one uses cartridges, which I don't believe we've seen since the Magnavox Odyssey, the original one. So
no, yeah.
Because of that, they were able to do some pretty interesting and different things with it. It probably made it more expensive, but I couldn't find a price anywhere. I think some of the games are also sold separately, but in total, there were 5 games that were released on the system. You had Sparring, which was your handball, kind of like one paddle versus a wall type gameplay, Pong game. And that was with Pong style of control, so only vertical. You also had Badminton, which was basically just Pong. You had Tennis, which was the Magnavox Odyssey Pong style, so you could now play Pong all 4 directions. You also had Super Tennis, which was probably the most interesting and biggest one because it was normal Pong again, but now you had scorekeeping. It wasn't numerical. It was like you had 10 dots on the top, like 2 rows of 10 dots at the top, one for each person. And whenever the ball went off your screen, you lost a dot.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah, that was probably the most advanced one. And then finally you had a game called Attack, which was just a sort of rat and mouse chase game, which I don't think there's anything really interesting about that, although they did have different sized squares for each player, so you knew who was who, but one person was always chasing the other and you didn't change sizes in the middle, so you would have had to hand off the controllers.
Right.
And I don't know how you would have figured out who won, because there's no scorekeeping or timer or anything, so that was kind of a weird one, I thought. And they also had 2 other games that they advertised, but they actually never made it or sold them. One was going to be called Car Race, and the other was called Naval Battle, which both sound really cool, but they were never made, so we couldn't test them, or there's no videos or evidence of them other than those advertisements. And just a couple of quick things about the system in general. It did have sound effects, but I don't know. Well, let's take a listen to it quick. So it's kind of weird because normally, it's Pong sounds, right? But it's not the classic Pong sound. It's more of like a as if you just messed up. But that's what you hear whenever you hit the ball. So it's kind of jarring, I'd say. It's not good sound, but there's some sound. So
that's the German way, I guess.
Yeah.
That harsh training in Pong, it really helps their athletes perform better.
Yeah, I guess so. So that was kind of weird, but at least it had sound. None of the games had scoring other than Super Tennis. And I think one of the most interesting things I just want to say right away about this whole console is I think it's the first console ever where you could play the Magnavox version of Pong and the Pong version of Pong. It had both.
Yeah.
Tennis and badminton, they called them.
And it's funny because I didn't really think about it until this kind of shows the difference. Like in tennis, you can move close to the net, and in Pong, in real life, you're at the end of the table. So in that sense, it kind of makes sense to be able to move in the Odyssey style and hit everything closer to the net because you're playing tennis version, or because you're playing tennis.
Yeah. I will say I'm pretty sure, just like in the Odyssey, you could just keep going to your opponent's side. But, I'm glad that they had both. I think that's kind of a neat and interesting feature of the Intertin, that it makes it different from any other console at this time. So that was interesting. Overall, I gave the gameplay for all 5 games in total a 3.5 out of 10, keeping in mind that Super Tennis is probably the one most people are going to go to, which is the Pong clone, but it had some scorekeeping and sound, which for a console is pretty good, I think. Overall gameplay, 3.5 out of 10. I mean, we're still talking about Pong here, and it's very simple, but you had at least the options of the Odyssey version or the Pong version, and also an attack game and stuff. So, or attack, which is the chase game. So it had some interesting things to it. For sound, I just gave it a 1 out of 10. I couldn't. The sound's annoying. What can I say? And then for graphics, I gave it a 1.5 out of 10. We're in 75 now, where you got animation with sharks.
Right.
Just Pong, black and white graphics. It's not as good as it used to be. So I just gave it 1.5 out of 10. It did have the visual scoring thing, which I thought was it looked fairly nice, better than some of the other non-numerical scoring that I've seen. Like
a bar that just fills up. This one at least kind of looks like lives or something because it's a ball.
That's right. Yeah. So, and it was very clearly not like another ball on the screen, which was good.
That's good. Yeah.
Some of the other ones, they kind of look like just another ball or something. So, yeah, I thought it was pretty good, but I'm not going to give it more than 1.5 out of 10. And then finally for relevance, I gave it 5.5 out of 10. Mainly because it used cartridges, and because it could use cartridges, it could have a bunch of other games, even could have kept making games like Car Race and Naval Battle, and ultimately, we're going to start seeing consoles move into that cartridge territory as the base thing to do. So for it to have it, I thought, that's pretty relevant to where the history is going to be going. And other than the Odyssey, they're the only ones that have done it. So I thought that was cool. It also maybe broke up the price a little bit because you could maybe just buy 1 or 2 games or just go for Super Tennis or something. So I should say, I think all of these games were sold like one at a time. So it wasn't like sold in packs like some of the Odyssey games were. So,
interesting. Yeah. So someone really had to go out and buy Attack if they wanted it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, which I don't know why we would do that, but maybe it was a cheaper one. I don't know. I will say, just based on the pictures and like some of the descriptions I've read, like Super Tennis, I think it had almost as many components in the Super Tennis cartridge than the whole system did on itself. So I bet that one was more expensive than some of the other games.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool. I'll also say quickly, the controllers looked really cool. It was, you had your 2 dials and a button for 2 people, but rather than it being glued to the actual console like we've seen, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
These were like detachable wired controllers, which was pretty nice.
Sick.
2 of them. I mean, I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, really. They're like, hey, I think Odyssey might have been onto something here with their original, and then as we'll see, I mean, that's the way to go with detachable controllers and cartridge for games.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good kind of first step into the console gaming for Interton, which I don't know much about them. I think they're going to make a couple other consoles, but they're not ultimately that relevant and will die out eventually. So we don't know much about them. But I gave the console a 2.75 out of 10. I mean, out of the 75 consoles, I think it's the best one so far. So it's like the Video Master Rally had no sound. The Odysseys didn't have scoring. So
yeah, and this actually has an option of several games. And
yeah. So I think it's a pretty decent little console. I was pretty happy to review it. I just wish Naval Battle would have come out because that sounded awesome.
Does sound good.
And who knows what it would have been like. But yeah, so that was the Interton Video 2000. And with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Wes, this has been an incredible episode. I don't know what you think, but I think we've played some really good games this week. We
did. And just some of the ones to re-highlight, some of the ones we were the most excited about. Of course, Pet at 5. Oh, yeah. I love fantastic dungeon crawling. Hope to see more of that soon. And I know that you will get to see more of it soon in the next episode. Oh, yeah. And Shark Jaws and Steeplechase, both pretty dang good Atari games that are coming out, and they're showing they can make great sound with those cabinets, and they can also throw some really good animation in there too. And as soon as they can put backgrounds in any of their games, it's going to be like perfect. Yeah. And then some interesting systems too, with the Pingatronic PP5 through 10, the Electro Tennis console by Epoch, and the most interesting of these all, the Interton Video 2000, which you just covered. Yep. And with that, a lot of good stuff. Yeah. Let's call it a day. Please check out our website. It's been recently updated, so go back and take a look at some of the images I've got up for some of these games. Also, send us any questions you have via our email or send us a tweet. So I think that's it, right, Wes? I haven't forgotten something. Oh, that's all the social media and website stuff we got. For now. For now. All right. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one.